Imagine this. You gave your best years to your country, served in silence, and returned home hoping for quiet, only to find a handful of self-important busybodies in polos and cheap badges trying to dictate every part of your life. That was me, a retired Navy SEAL who moved into a calm neighborhood with my daughter Emily thinking we'd finally found peace. I couldn't have been more mistaken. Before we go any further, drop a comment saying which country you're reading from. Let's see how far this thing spreads. It began small. Little notes shoved into my mailbox from the HOA about Emily's flower trellis. They called it unauthorized construction, a trellis of all things, while half the block sported bigger, more obvious structures. At first I ignored the letters. I didn't want trouble. Then the warnings escalated into fines, $200, $400, and threats of liens on my property. So I showed up at the monthly HOA meeting. At the head of the long table sat Karen Mitchell, president, designer sunglasses still on indoors, that smug half-smile stuck to her face. To her right was Mark Benson, their self-appointed security director. He had been a cop once, maybe, but he swaggered like a small-town sheriff. I explained my side calmly and put photos on the table of identical trellises down the street. Karen didn't bother to glance at them. She waved a hand and said, "Rules are rules, Mr. Hayes. If you can't comply, perhaps this isn't the right community for you." That's when Emily rose. My daughter, 20, fiery, and not one to shrink back, stood up for me. "You're picking on my dad because you think you can push him around," she said. "He's given more to this country than you ever will." A hush fell over the room. Karen's smile thinned. Benson leaned forward and hissed, "Careful, little girl. You don't want to make enemies here." I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. 2 days later, Emily came home shaken. She'd been walking the dog when a black SUV pulled up. 4 men climbed out wearing tactical vests with HOA compliance crudely patched on the chest. They weren't police, but they meant to look like it. One shoved her, another barked, "Tell your dad the trellis comes down, or next time it won't just be a warning." My blood ran cold. Assaulting my daughter on our property. That crossed into criminal behavior. Under 18 U.S.C. 912, impersonating a federal officer is illegal, and under state law what they did was battery. I moved so she could stand behind me, stepped forward, and locked eyes with the man holding the SUV door. My SEAL instincts kicked in like old reflexes. I assessed them quickly. 4 guys, sloppy posture, hands hovering near belts. Showmen, not professionals. I told Emily to call 911 and then said in a low, calm voice, "Relax and back off. You picked the wrong house." The tallest of them puffed up and swaggered like someone fresh from a cheap bar fight. His vest read, "Hay Compliance Unit" in crooked letters that looked ironed on in a garage. He jabbed a finger at Emily. "You think your little princess can run to daddy and ignore our orders?" he sneered. I felt Emily's grip tighten on my sleeve. I just smiled, the kind of steady, unblinking smile you get from having been through worse and come back. The first man threw a wild, telegraphed swing. I ducked, hooked his arm, and used a shoulder throw to slam him onto the gravel. He stayed there moaning. The second charged like a linebacker. I pivoted, drove an elbow into his ribs, grabbed his vest strap, and shoved him face first into the SUV hood where he coughed and went quiet. The third produced a baton, cheap plastic, not police issue, and swung. I caught his wrist mid-air, twisted it free, sent the baton clattering to the ground, then answered. Aired with a clean palm strike to his chest that left him stumbling. That left the 4th guy, who hesitated, glancing at his incapacitated buddies and at Emily, who had her phone up recording everything. I stepped toward him, measured and controlled, and said, "You have 2 options. Drop the act and walk away, or keep pretending to be law enforcement and spend the night in a real jail." He froze for a heartbeat, then scrambled into the driver's seat and peeled away in the SUV. Tires screeched as the SUV tore away, leaving its crew scattered on my driveway. Emily whispered, "Dad, you just dropped 4 guys like nothing." I rested a hand on her shoulder. They weren't trained. They came to intimidate, not to fight. But impersonating law enforcement? That's a felony. And I knew the law was clear. Under 18 U.S. Code 912, impersonating an officer carries up to 3 years behind bars. Add in battery for shoving Emily and trespassing on my land, and their scare tactic turned into serious charges. By the time real deputies arrived, 2 of the men were still groaning in the gravel. Emily handed over her video, I gave my statement, and I could already see Karen and Benson's fingerprints all over it. If you're following this HOA war, hit like and subscribe, because this story is only heating up. The deputies cuffed the three who hadn't escaped, reading their rights. One deputy glanced at me and asked, "Sir, you handled this alone?" I just shrugged, old instincts, but this wasn't finished. That fight was only the first shot. Karen and her crew had declared war on my family, and I wasn't backing down. The men folded quickly once separated. One groaned through bruised ribs, another whined about Karen's promises, and the third cracked the moment he sat under a light. Emily stayed at my side, clutching her phone like armor. She had the proof. Deputy Morales returned with notes. "Mr. Daniels, you were right. These guys aren't cops. They admitted HOA President Karen Benson hired them." Emily scoffed. "She wanted them to put hands on me. That's assault," Morales nodded, "and it'll hold in court." Under Texas Penal Code 2201, assault on a minor can mean a year in jail plus fines. At 18 U.S. Code 9-12 for impersonation and Texas Penal Code 30.05 for trespass, and Karen's stunt carried decades of potential prison. 30 minutes later, lights flashed outside Karen's pristine house. Neighbors peeked out as their president was hauled off in cuffs, still shrieking excuses. "This is a mistake! He's dangerous! He's military!" she cried, pointing at me as deputies shoved her into a cruiser. Emily kept the camera rolling. "Dangerous? The only danger was her," she muttered. Within hours, gossip spread like wildfire. Group chats lit up, neighbors whispered, and by nightfall everyone knew Karen was arrested for sending fake cops after my daughter. The HOA called an emergency meeting the next day. Karen was removed unanimously. No debate, no delay. Her empire of petty threats collapsed in minutes. As for her hired muscle, the DA hit them with impersonation, trespass, and assault. In court, they looked like frightened kids, not the bullies who swaggered into my yard. Later, Emily asked, "Dad, will Karen really go to jail?" I looked her in the eyes. Actions have consequences. She picked this fight. She forgot who she was up against. The law doesn't bend for an HOA title. Her charges included conspiracy to assault for directing the attack, solicitation of impersonation under 18 U.S. Code 912, trespassing under Texas Penal Code 30-05, and misuse of emergency services for bogus 911 calls under Texas Penal Code 42.0061. That night, I sat back on my porch, same chair, same stretch of land I'd fought to keep safe. Emily sat beside me, unharmed. That was all that mattered. Karen hadn't broken us. She had destroyed herself.